Hello, Coach. Bill Burnett, Fellowship of Christian Athletes. How's everything going today? We're going to be talking about we do the training, God does the changing. And we're using a resource called Wisdom Walk Sports. It's written by Dan Britton and Jimmy Page, and it's published by Summerside Press. And this is a great little tool for helping you to take a look at what coaching biblically is really all about. And so we want to look at this principle, a life-changing, game-changing principle. We do the training, God does the changing. We look back to our childhood. Most of us can remember being out back, maybe in the backyard, shooting baskets until dark or thereafter. And we spent hours and hours and hours maybe training for, you know, an incredible basketball career. But how many of us ever got a chance to really play? You know, well, maybe we played in junior high or high school, or maybe even beyond that. But did you know that 95% of the athlete's time is spent training, and less than 5% is actually spent competing? So you think about that. You know, if you want to compete, man, you got to train. I mean, it's all there is to it. But spiritually speaking, when we look at that, most of us spend very little time training, unfortunately. We probably spend about 99% of our time just kind of living, and maybe 1% of our time we would say is training. We might call it devotions or quiet times or whatever, but you know, sometimes we're not very devoted, and sometimes our time isn't very quiet, you know. We often treat it rather casually, and it might or might not happen, and we might not really even have a plan. And we can use excuses like I'm tired and I'm busy and other things to keep from actually doing the training. And so it's a real challenge, isn't it, sometimes to get to where we need to be with the training that we need to do. The bottom line is we want results without the work. And so we've got to be able to look at it as something that is really necessary if we're going to be able to weather the storms of life. We've got to be able to resist temptation and walk away from sin. We want to be unselfish, we want to be loving, we want to be slow to anger, but how can we become all of those things if we're not training? You know, our desire needs to be matched by our do. 1 Timothy 4 verses 7 through 8 tells us that we are to train ourselves to be godly. For physical training, Paul tells us, is of some value, but godliness has value for all things, holding promise for both the present life and also the life to come. And also, Coach Dungy a couple of weeks ago helped us with the verse 1 Corinthians 9:24 through 27 that talks about the training that is necessary for the athlete and for the Christian. So we look at all of that and we recognize that, man, you know, we've got to have a plan. And I want to share a couple of ideas with you that will help you as far as looking at this training idea. Training is always opposed. It's always opposed. Pursuing a relationship with Christ goes against our flesh, that is our before Christ self. I call it my BC self. It's something the enemy doesn't want to happen. It's something that our culture mitigates against, and it really is overwhelmed by the schedule that we have so often. The enemy doesn't want us connecting with God and growing in wisdom, and so he's going to attempt to distract us, discourage us, overwhelm us, and typically he uses this bugaboo, if you will, of busyness. Training is often quite painful. That's the second principle I want to present to you here. It's often quite painful, but it is always purposeful. And we have to realize that we're training for a reason, and that is to grow spiritually and to become more like Christ and to be His witness, to be a game changer, to be an influencer. Training is useful as a means, but it's a destructive end. Now, training gets us where we want to go, but our goal is becoming like Christ. Galatians 5:22 to 25, you know, talks about the Spirit, the fruit of the Spirit, I should say, and what is on the inside in terms of that growth of fruit then will come out in our lives as we, if you will, compete out there in the world as it presents itself to us. If anybody should get this principle, athletes and coaches should understand this, that we have to train to be able to perform. takes hours in the gym and on the practice field to be able to produce. If you want to experience real life change, you have to train your spirit in the same way. You got to make the sacrifice, you got to get a plan, you got to show up, for the workout. Your soul gets bigger and faster and stronger, and you'll be ready for the challenges of life when you train for godliness. There are no shortcuts, and we've got to do the training and then let God do the changing. Well, Coach, hey, have a great week, and hope this principle helps you through this week, and we'll see you next week.